I'm going to do a little more now on Robert Gazzaway and the airplane crash. I'm interested in Gazzaway because I'm wondering, because I think J.D. Tippit was involved in a communist plot to kill JFK, and I'm curious as to how J.D. Tippit would have been recruited for such a thing, because his biography doesn't seem to indicate that he would have been moving in the circles where that he would have been exposed to that. And this Gazzaway thing, because I think there's a possibility Robert Gazzaway was related to Marie Tippit, and that Robert Gazzaway might be some kind of a communist agent, a Soviet agent. I'm thinking that maybe Robert Gazzaway somehow recruited J.D. Tippit. This is very speculative. But one problem with this is the spellings of the names, but this name is routinely misspelled everywhere in many different ways, so that doesn't deter me too much. Another issue is that Robert Gazzaway apparently is from California, which doesn't mean he couldn't be a relative of Gazzaways in Texas, but it would tend to speak against that idea. And this here is a screen capture of I don't have the money to spend on anything, so I didn't. Well, when you start a free trial, I didn't even try to start a free trial because I know it's just a hook, and I don't even take the hooks that are going to cost me money. So I don't know, I haven't read the article here, but there's a newspaper article that came out when the plane went missing, and it refers to Robert Gazzaway, or Gazzaway, being from Fillmore, and the Fillmore family hopes for something, and that might even be a picture of Gazzaway right there that I have in the red. It's not, I can't tell for sure unless I want to get involved in this website. Maybe someone else could do that and post the information. But anyway, the indication is in this newspaper article that Gazzaway is from Fillmore, California, and that's where his family is. But if you look at the 1940 census data, there is a Gazzaway family in Fillmore, California, but Robert isn't on the list here. Now, at this time, Robert Gazzaway should have been about 17 years old, so it's possible that he had moved out by then. However that may be, I think it's a pretty good bet that Robert Gazzaway is indeed from Fillmore, California, considering the newspaper article that appeared on the day after the airplane disappeared. So Gazzaway apparently is from California, but he's married to a woman living in Dallas in 1960 and 61, and when he dies, he's still married to her, and she still lives in Dallas. So I don't know how they got together, but apparently for some time they were at least living in Dallas. And in the 1961 phone book, there is a Bob J. Gazzaway, that must be our guy, living in Dallas. It says he's an employee of Lone Star Airline Incorporated, living at Cedar Springs, apartment 101. Well, I googled around, and there's a Lone Star Airline, but it opened up in 1984 and closed down in 1990s, I think. So it couldn't be that Lone Star Airline, and I can't find another Lone Star Airline that might apply. At least there doesn't seem to be any mention of one online that can be found with a Google search. Perhaps there was a Lone Star Airline that was some kind of regional airline. But that's a bit strange, I think, because in the accident report here, it says that Gazzaway was hired by the Flying Tiger Line in 1953. And so the implication is, at least, even though it's not said explicitly, that he has worked for Tiger Line since 1953 in 1962, and yet apparently in 1961, at least according to the phone book listing, he's working for some other airline prior to the crash that killed him, and that other airline apparently doesn't exist, which seems a little strange to me. So I looked in the 1961 Dallas phone book for any other reference to this Lone Star Airline, and there's only one other reference in the entire phone book. There's only one other reference to the Lone Star Airline. And that happens to be another employee, although it says Lone Star Airlines, plural, and Anita F. Walker, who happens to live at the Cedar Springs apartment, same as Bob Gazzaway, who happens to live at apartment 103, which looks like it's probably two doors down from Bob Gazzaway's apartment. So the only references to this apparently non-existent airline are these two people who live practically next to each other in the same apartment building or apartment complex. Whatever it is, Anita Walker. Walker is a very common name, so I wasn't able to pin her down to any other Walkers who might possibly be involved. But there she is, the only other employee of Lone Star Airlines in Dallas. And now Gwynne Chandler and Robert Gazzaway were married on December 31st, 1960. And apparently on September 8th, 1961, a child was born. And according to this, that child died on the same day. I don't know if it was technically a stillbirth or died shortly after birth. But that child was buried in the same cemetery that Gwynne Gazzaway eventually was buried in. So apparently Robert Gazzaway stayed around in Dallas long enough to father a child in Dallas. And this is just a few months before he's going to die in the airplane crash the following March, after the stillbirth. So I still can't prove there's any relationship between this Gazzaway and Marie Gazzaway, the woman that J.D. Tippett married. Apparently he was hanging around Dallas for a while. It looks like maybe he spent a year or so in Dallas working for the Lone Star Airlines. But that's about all I can come up with on him. And I also want to look at the other airplane that crashed on the same night, the other flying Tiger Line airplane that took off from the same airport that Flight 739 took off from. It's a very strange crash. This is from the official investigation into that crash. A Lockheed Constellation Model L1049H N6911C, owned by the Flying Tiger Line Incorporated and being operated under contract with the Military Air Transport Service, crashed during the hours of darkness at Adak, Alaska, March 15, 1962, at 12:14. At 12:14. Impact and subsequent fire destroyed the aircraft. There were 7 occupants, all crew members. 6 received minor injuries, and 1, the duty flight engineer, was trapped in the cockpit and died in the fire. The approach was routine to a point approximately 3 miles from touchdown, where the flight was advised that it was going slightly above glide path. They were a little too high. The flight next was told that it was coming down on glide slope, followed immediately by below glide slope. Now they're flying too low. 6 other transmissions by GCA advised the flight it was below glide slope, followed by advice to execute a missed approach. So 6 times, or 7 times now, they tell the airplane that it's too low to land, to get the landing strip, and they even advised that they abort the landing attempt and try again. At about the same time, Captain Hughes advised GCA, "Roger, we have the field in sight. Thank you, 9/11." The distance from touchdown at the time of this transmission was approximately 1¾ miles. The captain estimated the altitude at which he became contact as 400 feet. The airport altitude is 17 feet, whatever that means. So what's going on here is that Captain Hughes is ignoring the advice of the traffic controllers that are telling him he's coming in too low and that he ought to go around again and redo the landing. The remainder of the approach was conducted under visual flight conditions by co-pilot Lowe. He asked Captain Hughes, serving as co-pilot, for 80% flaps from 60% then being carried, but the captain did not comply. Near the approach end of the runway, Captain Hughes remarked to co-pilot Lowe, "You are too low," and Mr. Lowe added power as Captain Hughes pulled back on the yoke. Almost concurrently, the right landing gear struck rocks short of the runway. Initial contact was at a point approximately 328 feet from the threshold lights and 4 feet below the elevation of runway 23. So they're 4 feet below the runway when they hit these rocks. And so it's just very weird that Captain Lowe, being told 7 times that they were coming in too low and ignoring the warnings, apparently at the last moment he tried to correct but failed to do so. And what happened was the plane was destroyed. It burned. All the cargo apparently must have been destroyed too, and 1 man died. I wouldn't want to fly with that captain again. I wouldn't want him flying my planes. I mean, just reading this anyway. Maybe there's something else that isn't said here, but I would say this guy's incompetent. But he lived to be 80 years old, died in 2010, and even moved up in his Pilots Association here. He was Secretary-Treasurer from 1988 to 1990. So apparently it didn't hurt his career any. But it's very weird. Now it doesn't sound like something somebody would intentionally do, because it sounds like doing something like this you'd be taking a great risk of being killed. So I don't know what to say about it except that it's very weird, and it happened on the same night that the other flight blew up and disappeared. So it's very weird, but I guess that's all I can say about it. So, in conclusion, all I can say is it's all very weird, and I have a suspicion that Robert Gazzaway recruited J.D. Tippit, but it has to be speculation and no more, unless I can find something else.